Today's conversation is sponsored by First Generation Capital Partners. If you're an accredited investor and you want to know about how we're helping other accredited investors keep more of their income, go to firstgencp.com/going long.
The greatest impact in my life is learning, borrowing information. Like the old saying is, you can either borrow information or you can pay retail for it, right? And I've loved the ability to borrow from someone else's experiences and be able to then not just take 100% of theirs, but to take what I love about it and then make it my own.
You're listening to the Going Long podcast with Billy Keels, the #1 podcast for long-distance real asset investing.
Welcome to the Going Long podcast. We're back once again to continue to help to educate you so you feel much more comfortable as well as confident investing beyond your backyard. And yes, I am your host, Billy Keels, and I am super excited to welcome you back to today's conversation because this one is absolutely amazing. You're going to get so much out of this. Listen, I'm going to get to this really quickly, but you know what? We continue to move up the charts together, and I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for continuing to be here, to continuing to download. Look at that. I'm getting all tongue-tied, and continuing to share the conversations with your friends, with your family, and talking about the things that you're learning here so that you build your expertise. Also, for those of you who have already left an honest written review as well as rating, thank you very much. If you haven't had a chance and you want to do that on the Apple Podcast platform, we make a nice little video for you here. Go ahead and leave that honest written review as well as rating. Let us know what you like. You're already seeing many changes, which is fantastic for you. And also, you know what? We are really excited about being able to offer you the newest platform to find every single conversation that we've ever done, video, audio, transcripts. Just go to firstgencp.com/podcasts. You can find every conversation. firstgencp.com/podcasts. You can find every single thing that you want to find in terms of the podcast. So listen, you all know that I really enjoy different vehicles to be able to help you get to your investment destination. Today's conversation with one of the co-founders of Wealth Without Wall Street, Russ Morgan, is going to get into that. We're going to help you understand a number of the different things that you can be doing, different vehicles that you can look at, that you can ultimately help you to move forward and get closer to your goals much faster. So I'm looking forward to you having insight into this conversation with Russ Morgan of Wealth Without Wall Street, and we'll get to that just after this. Are you a busy, high-paid professional? Someone that in the previous 2 years has earned $200,000 and is expected to earn $200,000 this year? Or maybe if you filed jointly, previously you've earned $300,000 the previous 2 years and you're also expected to do that this year. Or maybe if not, either individually or jointly, you have $1 million in net worth, not including your primary residence. If you meet any of these criteria, then you're someone that the IRS considers to be an accredited investor. That probably means you're someone like an enterprise software sales executive. You may be an executive in a major corporation. You may be a doctor. You may be a lawyer, maybe a high-paid consultant. You may even work for a major sports franchise. The thing I know you have in common is that you continue to do the hard work. Like you're doing 100% of the work and you're only bringing home 50% of the reward because you continue to get crushed by your income taxes. If you are tired of this situation and you're looking for a new solution, then go to firstgencp.com/going long. When you get there, that's going to help you to start the journey so that you can begin to take back control of your taxes, take control of your time. And then also that means you're going to be able to spend more of the time that you want with the people that you love the most. And that is the way that you're going to get the personal freedom that you're looking for. So if you're looking to take back control, go ahead and go to firstgencp.com/going long and see how we can help you today. If you want to learn more ideas on how to create wealth without Wall Street so that you can accelerate your long distance investing success from the idea guy himself, then guess what? Today's the conversation that you're going to want to listen to until the very last word. You know why? Because today's guest, well, when he was younger, he had dreams of becoming a baseball pitcher, a professional baseball pitcher. He graduated from Auburn University. I'm sure he's pretty proud of that. He also is a certified financial planner as well as an IBC practitioner. What is that all about? I'm sure he's going to tell us. He is a serial entrepreneur that's on a mission to help others build their wealth without Wall Street. He's also the host as well as the founder of the super duper popular community, Wealth Without Wall Street. It gives me great pleasure to welcome to today's conversation, Mr. Russ Morgan. Russ, welcome to the show, man.
Billy, man, thank you for having me, and flattery will get you everywhere with me.
everywhere. Okay, I love that. Hey, by the way, it's Wealth Without Wall Street, not just the community, but also the podcast. Super duper popular, and you've been very kind to have me on as a guest as well. So I am really looking forward to the Going Long family, getting to know you, Russ, learning from you, and gaining more insight because of your experience. So you know the deal here. You're going to get 2 questions in the beginning. You're going to get 3 in the end. And then in the middle, you're going to get a bunch of questions, Russ. I just don't know what those questions are yet, but I know whatever the answers are, they're going to add loads of value to the Going Long family. You ready to get started?
Let's do this, man.
I knew you'd be ready. Here we go. So help us understand, first and foremost, where is it that you call home in the U.S.?
So I live in Birmingham, Alabama, which is kind of in the southeast of the U.S. for those over the seas. And I grew up in Alabama. I went to school, as you said, Auburn, which is, by the way, if you follow American football, U.S. football, college is huge in the South. Yep. And I live in the state where the University of Alabama is, which is obviously the dominant sport. So I'm a very contrarian, hence the reason our name Wealth Without Wall Street fits me so perfectly.
Fantastic. I love that. I thought you were going to say I pronounced it wrong or something like that. I was going to be like, no, hang on, man. Okay, cool. At least I got that right. I appreciate it. Other thing, Russ, you know I love positivity, man. Help us understand, what is the most positive thing that's happened to you in the last 24 hours?
Man, every single day I get a chance to go work out with 3 guys, and I'm always energized by being able to get out there and be physical, and to spend time with guys that spiritually lift me up as well. So in the last 24 hours, man, I got to work out with my guys. It's been great.
All right. Fantastic. Absolutely love that. I appreciate, sometimes we think that when really amazing, like they have to be larger than life things to happen. And so just to have the reminder that it can be the simple things. It's working out, having the spiritual uplifting as well with people that you appreciate, know, like, and trust. And thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah. And you know what, Russ, you know this about me already, but I just kind of had to show it to you here. Like I set the bar like really, really high. Sometimes it's so high that I can't even like reach it. And I do things that are a little bit absurd, like trying to tell your entire backstory in 3.5 seconds. That was like, it was not going to be possible, right? But I tried anyway. But so here's the thing. I'm going to need your help. I would love for you to tell your backstory in your own words. And you have more than 3.5 seconds. You take the time that you need because you're our guest today. And if you could help us out along the way, Russ, by really helping us to understand some of the major decisions that you made to get to this point in your journey. And then we'll see where you and I take the conversation from there.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you the shortened version. Nothing I do is 3.5 seconds. At least the thing I'll publish. I got in the financial world in 2004. I thankfully, when I graduated college 4 years earlier, nobody would take me on. I would have failed miserably. And what I didn't know, and what most people don't know about the financial world, is that it's really a sales world. And it's the process of the people working in it don't know a whole lot about finance. They're trying to learn, they're trying to do good, but at the same time, it's about sales, right? You got to convince people to buy products that make money, or fees that bring in money. And I was learning that process for 4 years, and I felt like I started understanding how the financial markets were working up until the crash of 2008. And at that point in time, I had become, as you mentioned in my bio, I'd become a certified financial planner, which I thought was the pinnacle. That was the place I wanted to get to, right? There was kind of well-rounded in the financial space, not only from investments, from insurance to taxes and so forth and so on. And what I learned is that I didn't know anything at all. all the things I had learned and been told all failed and proved to be false during that process. And I was set out on a journey to try to learn what were ways that I and my clients could make money regardless of what was happening on Wall Street. I ran into a man named Nelson Nash at a conference down in Orlando, Florida, which is about 6 to 10 hours. I was about to say 6, and I was like, no, it's about 10 hours away from where I'm at. And I basically learned the concept of how you could store cash in a place and ultimately start buying assets that produce passive income. And that was a new concept because in the financial world, we're just not taught that. We're taught invest for the long run. We're taught accumulation, retirement accounts, all of those things. And I was really fascinated by it. And what I didn't know, a part of that process is ultimately I was going to have to unlearn all the things I'd learned. And that was a little bit difficult, but I slowly did. And as time went on, I ultimately moved out of that typical financial planning firm. I let go of all my securities license. I let go of my certified financial planning designation. All those things didn't mean a whole lot to me. And my business partner and I started a company called Wealth Without Wall Street at the end of 2015 and started a podcast in 2017. And the journey has been learning about how to build businesses, how to buy operating businesses, how to buy assets to produce income, and how to be more efficient with taxes, and how to build infrastructure around it so it all doesn't crumble apart regardless of what the next crash looks like.
All these things are music to our ears, especially when you start talking about building the infrastructure, being able to take action, to also along the journey recognize maybe the action that you've taken is not the most appropriate because the context of your life could have changed. And at the same time, also being able to work together. So you mentioned earlier, and I know for those of you who've not had a chance to check out the other part of the duo of Wealth Without Wall Street, Joey was also a guest on episode 184. So I would recommend that you also check that out because both Russ and Joey have a lot of really positive things going on at Wealth Without Wall Street, and probably the best app I've ever seen for bringing in community members. So, but you said a number of things, Russ, but the thing that kind of really, I guess, tugged at my heart a bit was you mentioned, because we have a lot of people who are in the sales profession here. I personally believe that sales is one of the most noble professions if executed properly, because you mentioned earlier it's about being able to convince people. Maybe I have a little bit of a different take on that, but what you said is absolutely true, because a lot of times the perception is, how do we convince people to do certain things? But even beyond that, you said that you had to realize that, you had to unlearn what you learned in order to make a positive impact. That's not an easy thing to do. So could you maybe talk to us about what that was like for you just emotionally to have to go through that? And then what was the main reason for doing that? You touched on it a little bit, but I'd love for you to dig into that a little bit, please.
Yeah, well, let me dig myself out of the hole first. The first comment, because I agree 100% with you. I don't use the word sales in a derogatory manner or negative manner. I think sales is what the world goes by. Everybody's in sales, by the way. My wife, who homeschools our kids, is in sales every single day, getting the kids out of bed, getting them to study, getting them to off their activities. All that is sales, right? In a massive way. What I meant by that is that most of the people starting in the financial world know less than the people that they're having convincing them to give them money. And I think that is dangerous, right? Yeah, and that's a part of that profession that I was not a fan of, because I knew very little, but the only way for me to learn was really by staying in the business, and that was getting people to do stuff with money. And I would say most of the time, unfortunately, it just was not probably in their best interest and probably didn't work out great. So, all right, now go back to unlearning. Yeah. There's a great video. If you've never seen this, I'll encourage everybody to take 7 minutes out of their day, go to YouTube, type in backwards bicycle. Have you seen this, Billy, before?
No, never.
Oh, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. I'll give you the so what to it, because it goes into the unlearning. We've all learned how to ride a bicycle at some point in our life. It's programmed. It's something that you could say. We even use the term, it's like riding a bicycle, right? Like once you do something, we use that analogy. But here's the key, is that we learned that process and it was ingrained over and over. So that way we have these neuro pathways that have rutted in our mind. But in that video, the gentleman who's an engineer, a NASA engineer, is going through and actually has taken a bicycle and switched it to where when you turn the handlebars left, the wheel goes right and vice versa. And so you would think, oh, well, I can conquer that, right? I can just shift this thing. Well, he proved that he could not ride a backwards bicycle. I mean, so much so that he could not even make one revolution on the pedals. And by the way, a friend of mine had a bicycle made that way, and I can attest, you cannot do it. It is very few definitive statements. This is one of those things. And he set out on a mission to learn how to do it. And I think it took him like 8 months or something like that to be able to do this. He traveled the world proving it. And what's happened is when we learn something, whether it's as simple as riding a bicycle or learning financial markets, right? Or what we believe is the proper way to be financially successful. And then someone comes along with another idea, that either we have to ignore that idea or we have to get a bigger box. We have to unlearn the concept in order to bring it in. And that's super duper hard. And for me, that's what I was dealing with because I had been trained in it. I'd spent, thousands of hours learning it. And as I was trying to understand that the best way to be financially successful was having more passive income than I had monthly expenses, not growing a pot of money to be worth, 7-8 figures. It took a little bit for me to get that around my, Alabama brain.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate it. I'm going to definitely check out that 7-minute video because just thinking about it, that helps to make things concrete. And also the fact that you went through that process, Russ, it's really interesting, right? Because I would think from where I'm sitting today, and hopefully a lot of the Going Long family is you have a very unique superpower because you know what it's like on the other side. And so as you went through this unlearning process, which is not an easy process, and now you've been able to be able to build the knowledge base, build the foundation, build the network and the infrastructure, maybe you could talk to us about how that is also helping you today as you help to guide others to find what their most appropriate vehicles are to get them to whatever life destination that they're looking for.
Yeah, I think one of the simplest things that we ever did or best things we ever did was we tried everything out on ourselves. And going through this process and learning who we were as investors. I don't know if Joey mentioned this, but we developed this concept called the investor DNA. And when we basically match who we're designed to be in the way we see the world with different opportunities in the investment space, and we can make those two cohesive and match, we really start to see success. And too often times people are investing in things based upon the recommendation of somebody, and regardless of the investment itself. So I'll give you an example, Billy. When the first major investment I made outside of just the traditional stocks and mutual fund world, I bought a single family property down in Auburn, Alabama, which is a little college town. And, single family homes, everybody like, this is the best thing you ever do, right? Like, great way to build wealth, build cash flow. Well, it was the worst for me. Well, because anybody who knows in single family properties, it's slow, right? It's the tortoise concept. It's a slow and steady, and it gets better each and every year, but it takes a while. Well, I bought this property and I'm like, $100 a month? Really? That's what I'm getting from this, right? And I'm not satisfied with it. And anytime anything went wrong, right? The neighbor flooded the unit or whatever it was, like, I'm frustrated. I'm like, man, so I held it for like 10 years. I made money in it, but it's one of the things I detest the most because it just did not match my investor DNA. Well, now I love my investor DNA is very active, hands-on, want to add value to things. So I love finding businesses, operating companies. We have short-term rental companies. We have a land flipping company. We have an e-commerce business that sells candles online. Like, those sort of things jazz me up because I can add value and feel like I can do things to them. But those could be terrible investments for somebody else if they're not built that way.
So I love that, right? And so this is just uniquely one of your superpowers that I've mentioned before. So having been through, you learn to sell this particular product. It doesn't matter because this is part of your KPIs, and we're amongst salespeople here, so we also understand that. So these types of things exist, but being able to break through that and also recognizing that it is not one size fits all for everyone. There are different vehicles, and depending on the context of your life, vehicle A, i.e. your single family residence, may be the right thing for you, or it may be having an operating business. You also talked about the different land and land flipping and things like that. And I want us to come back to that because one of the things that I appreciate about what you're doing at Wealth Without Wall Street is it's really about the different vehicles. And you demonstrate that, and hopefully you can talk to us a little bit about the way that you literally month after month are sharing with people the progress that you made. So it's not just theory, it's the theory, and you're also showing that you're doing what you're talking about. But one of the things that that I happen to live here in Barcelona, Spain. I've been investing exclusively in different products that are back in the United States, different assets. And that's everything from energy equipment to small multifamily to development deals to hotels and these different things. But there's always this contrarian kind of thought, because most people were taught when you invest in something that you, especially specifically in a hard asset, that you have to be in the same place as the hard asset, right? And Russ, I don't believe that, because I've been doing something very contrarian to that for a decade. And I know that one of the things that's really strong about your community is you also teach about the different principles and the different processes, but it's very contrarian. So can you help us understand, like, what is it that also is giving you the audacity to be able to invest in things that are not necessarily in your backyard?
Yeah. Well, we were talking about working out earlier, right? So a guy came up to me today. I had a Unchained Capital shirt on, which is a big custodian in the blockchain Bitcoin world. And the back of it says, "Friends don't let friends sell Bitcoin." And so the guy comes in and he knows that I'm in the financial world, doesn't quite understand exactly what I do probably. And he says, "Well, are people asking you about, the potential crash and how's that going?" And so we start talking about stuff. And I was like, I focus on cash flow. And he goes, I got this friend who keeps telling me that I should invest in a storage unit, and it's, way off in a different city. And he's like, I just don't think I want to, I don't want to run a storage unit in this city. I was like, of course you don't want to run it. Nobody wants to run it. You want to own it and have someone else run it, right? Like
ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, so it doesn't really matter if it's in a different city or different state, in a different country. What does matter is, do you understand the asset class? Do you understand how it works? Do you understand the people who are running it and why they find value in it? And can they add value to it? So to me, one of the things that we do a lot in our mastermind groups are understanding our buy box, understanding what are the things that, if I'm going to invest in an asset class, what are the things that's going to jazz me up about it? And then what should I be asking those operators outside of my expertise, so that I understand that they have the value that can add to it? So to your point, it's about we all need to be sharpening our financial IQ axe. And I think too oftentimes, I don't know, we get credited here in the U.S. to Abe Lincoln, but who knows, based upon the internet, who actually said it. But it's like, if you were giving 3 hours to cut down a tree, he said, he'd spend the first 2.5 hours sharpening the axe. And I think too oftentimes we just want to go invest, and we don't want to spend time learning. And I know that that's not the case for your listener, because they're sitting here listening to your podcast episode after episode. They're learning. They're probably taking action and going and following other people on it and to learn more about it. But that's the key, is that we have to learn. We have to understand that we just can't invest just to invest. We need to understand what we're investing in, so that the outcomes will be more certain.
And so when you look at that certainty of outcomes, or more certain outcomes, I also happen to know that you all help individuals get clear. Like you talked about the investor DNA earlier, but talk to us about, because I'm a big believer in being able to get to a destination. I happen to also believe, that I've talked about before, there are many different vehicles. It's the right vehicle at the right time in the right context. Talk to us about how you also help people get clear on the destination and what are the right steps that they need to take and the different goals that they may have for themselves, et cetera. Because I think this is a major value add.
Yeah, one of the things that we did probably a year and a half ago, Billy, is that we created a concept called the passport, which I think is unique, since you and I are talking across international lines. In order for you to travel here and me come there, we have to have passports.
Yep.
And we think about, when we're traveling, we're envisioning what we want to accomplish. So we built out a course. It's probably the greatest work that we ever created. It took way more time than anything we've ever invested into. And it's free, by the way. And it helps people understand where they're going and why they're wanting to go there. And sometimes that seems a little bit like frou-frou, and people are like, I don't really want to get into the whole mindset thing. But what I find is, oftentimes the reason why we stop short in that last mile is because we really haven't defined what is the thing that's so important to us that it's worth us doing. So I'm sitting here looking at my screen right now, and I do this every morning. It's a reminder of myself to look up here. Passive income and all my operating companies that we have are really useless without my family and my spiritual values and all the stuff that I look at. So I go through and I see what's important to me and why am I doing what I'm doing. And I think that that's part of our process within our Passport Challenge, is for people to understand what they want to do, what they want to be, what they want to have, and maybe some of the gaps standing in their way. And it's a very process-oriented approach to helping people. And then we give them the option to take another step, which is a paid-for course, which gives them access to that investor DNA. And they go through this Pathfinder, which then starts uncovering some of the building blocks. And for us, it's that process that we love, when people who haven't developed that plan, who haven't developed that vision yet, to go through that.
And so once again, it's just how you continue to build. And it's about helping you to get clear on where it is that you want to go, what it is that you want to do, but more importantly, why. And so as someone who is a recovering perfectionist, and I know we've talked about this before, sometimes it can be a little bit intimidating to recognize that there are gaps. But when you're following a process that Russ is talking about, identifying those gaps is a great thing, especially when you have the support system around you, because that's going to allow you to actually take the steps to move beyond the gap, to recognize that the gap is there. And then what is the action plan that you need to put in place to be able to minimize that gap, causing you to not get to the ultimate destination? Because the worst thing you can do is not recognize it, not do anything about it. And that's the thing that continues to hold you back. Would you agree with that, Russ?
100%. And I tell those who are perfectionists, there's a great book that Dan Sullivan wrote on that concept, and I'm struggling with the exact name. It's something like Standing in the Gap, or my brain is not pulling it out. But it's basically that we see perfection, right? And we're envisioning the horizon out in front of us, and we want to measure against that as compared against measuring to where we've come from.
The gap in the gain. The gap in the gain.
Gap in the gain. There you go. That's to me, that's a great way to consider everything that we do. And hence the reason why we should be measuring our progress, measuring our success. In every one of our mastermind groups, we're doing that, whether we're measuring to 100% of where our passive income equals our monthly expenses, or in our passive income mastermind group, we're measuring to 200%. We have to measure backwards and to see how far we've come, because that's what motivates us to keep going, but also encourages to say, look how far we've come.
Fantastic. I absolutely appreciate that. And also the reference there. Trusting that you're enjoying today's conversation. And you know what? If you're tired of getting crushed by taxes and you're looking for greater freedom to be able to choose what you want to do when you want to do it, make sure that you go to firstgencp.com/going long and see how we can help you today. Let's get back to the conversation. One of the other things, actually, I've got two things that I want to talk to you about for sure. One is you made this transition again. Some people may have not heard, or this is their first opportunity to really hear about this concept that I just kind of left ambiguous as IBC, because I didn't want to say exactly what it was, because I'd love for you to I would love for you to help us understand, because I understand the concept, but many people are not aware still today, aware of the infinite banking concept, how this vehicle, once again, can help you to get to your destination, provided the context. So could you give us like a 101, like really, really basic of what that IBC is and how it can be useful for someone?
I'll attempt to. So I just got back from Alaska, by the way, Billy.
Oh.
And they say the state bird of Alaska is the mosquito, and I believe it, because they're everywhere. They're amazing. Well, my mentor, actually, the man who wrote the book Becoming Your Own Banker, which infinite banking concept was basically spelled out in that book, was Nelson Nash, and he would be famously asked this question to describe what the infinite banking concept was, and usually he was given a very short period of time. And if you know Nelson, he used to do a 10-hour workshop, which on any financial concept, you used to be like, I would be bored to tears. And I can promise you, I attended probably 10 or 12 of those, and I was never bored. And neither were the hundreds of people that would be in the audience listening to him. And I was like one of the very few financial professionals, by the way. But he would always say, when given, hey, Nelson, could you give us 5 minutes and tell us what this is about? He would say, I'm like a mosquito in a nudist colony. I know what to do. I just don't know where to start. So I'm going to do my best, okay, Billy, to give you this in just a nutshell, because I know we have limits.
Can I use that, by the way, in the future?
Oh man, please. It's not original to me. I'm just borrowing it, man. This is a great one. But so one, infinite banking is a concept, like I mentioned a second ago. It's really spelled out very well in the book, Becoming Your Own Banker by R. Nelson Nash. it's really based on, I would say, 3 principles. The first principle is that we deal in borrowed money. You finance everything that you buy, whether you pay cash for something, right? You give up the interest that money could have been earning for you, or we borrow the money from someone else and we pay them interest. Mm-hmm. Secondly, our need for finance is huge within that parcel. And so we need to recognize that we're dealing with large amounts of cash over our lifetime, especially as we start investing. So we deal in borrowed money, and it's big. The second principle is that money has to be stored somewhere, right? So the biggest flaw people make in that money has to be stored somewhere, they assume that it should be stored in banks, because like if I'm going to send you money, it usually comes from one bank account and ends up in another bank account. And they assume, well, that's where wealth should be stored. But as you start to really look as to where large corporations, banks store cash, it's not in that. It's actually stored in cash value, dividend paying whole life insurance. I mean, to the tune of billions and hundreds of billions of dollars. And you can Google all of that, something called bank-owned life insurance, BOLI, and you can see how big that is. The third part is that Nelson spells out in that book is that you can actually build the storage house for your cash through these dividend paying whole life concepts to finance all the purchases that you make. So for us, Billy, we share this often on our show, is that we've been able to build almost $50,000 a month in passive income. And it's all been based upon us borrowing against these cash value life insurance policies that we've been storing cash in over the last 12 to 13 years. And the beauty is that not only do we have assets that are producing cash flow, but we also have this asset at the insurance company that most people don't recognize, that we are actually earning interest on that money every single day. And it's gone up every single day. So as the market has been going down here in the US, our cash values have continued to rise. And the insurance company just lend us money against that cash. And they never call that asset because it's the safest asset on the books. And so for us, those are the 3 principles that we use. Within that is recognizing that we deal in borrowed money, that money has to be stored somewhere, and we can build this system in dividend paying cash value so that we can ultimately be the controller of all the cash flow.
That was a pretty effective mosquito, by the way.
I've had 12 years to perfect that, by the way. But it is difficult. And I encourage people to always be a student, right? Go learn. There's plenty of information out there. The book, Becoming Your Own Banker, or his second book, Building Your Warehouse of Wealth, is another great one.
Yeah. And so one of the things, and so you've broken down these three core principles. You mentioned one thing that I commend you and Joey for sharing, because I mentioned before, it's not just the theory, but they, meaning Russ and Joey, actually share this on a monthly basis. And Russ, if you could just talk about that. I know this is something that's available so people can actually learn and watch what you're doing. And it's something that I think is a very positive aspect of you not just saying that you're doing certain things, but you're demonstrating the value, the things that are happening positively. When things don't go positively, you also see that. You find out what the course corrections are happening. But maybe you could talk to a little bit about that. And also, what was the driver behind your decision to share that openly?
Yeah, Joey and I, when we first started podcasting, many things that we don't know how to do. One was effectively communicate, and podcast was a new entree into communicating to the world. And so we went to this international conference called Podcast Movement. And, the Lord blessed us is that we went to an event. Joey is a connector. One of the first people he meets is this girl named Kate. And Kate has been now married to, but at the time was longtime girlfriend to a guy named John Lee Dumas, which is Entrepreneur on Fire. Huh. And so they just became buddies. They were sitting next to each other. And so Kate was like, hey, I don't know what you guys are doing later. We're going over to this event if you guys want to come over. So Joey and I had a chance to go hang out with John Lee Dumas and ultimately another guy, named Pat Flynn, which is the passive income podcast. And so I'm sitting there like with 2 people. By the way, at the time, I didn't even know who they were because I was not listening to podcasts. Soon found out how how blessed we were to be in the presence of these two individuals.
I was going to say, it usually works out better that way, because then it's just you're having a conversation. So
yeah. We're with the EO Fire guy, the smart passive income guy. And as I started researching them after the fact, I realized that one, how valuable they were to the world, and we need to know them more. But also both of them were publishing their passive income report right there on their website. Mm-hmm. And their passive income looks a lot different than ours. Most of theirs is more sponsorships and affiliate. But I was like, Joey, you and I really want to be accountable, right? Because what you track grows, but what you track and report on grows exponentially. Yeah. And I was like, man, if you really want to jump, boost this up, let's start putting our passive income out for the world, right? Like, and obviously our audience is much smaller than theirs. I was like, but let's do that. Let's be accountable, not only to our audience, but to the world, to what this passive income. And we published our first report, I believe it was June, July of 2020. And I think we had about $4,500 a month total between the two of us in passive income at the time, which wasn't shabby, by the way, but it wasn't amazing. And all that did is made us focus. It made us get really dialed into how do we build passive income? What are the ways that we can do it? How every time we make a decision, we think of the people that are going to be seeing those decisions. And right. we were like, man, we got to do well for our audience, right? Because we want them to learn. We want them to be able to see success. And, we've had months as high as almost 80,000 a month in passive income. And I think the last month that we reported was 47,000.
Wow. So, it is the learning, and it's the accountability, and it is the ability to say, hey, listen, because you mentioned it a couple of times, Russ, and I hope that the Go Along family heard that it's not really about what Russ and Joey are doing. It's about how can we help the community to learn from what it is that we're doing. And whether it is an 80,000 month or it was starting at 4,500 or starting at zero, technically, it's being able to demonstrate that path and be able to share and show your learnings. It's something that I appreciate about what you do. And I thought it's also just interesting to share with the Go Along family. Like here's the other thing though. You know what, Russ? We kind of got to get into the Going Along Final 3, man.
Let's do it.
But the thing is, I can't get into the Going Along Final 3 unless you tell me, because you're our special guest today, my friend, that you're ready for the Going Along Final 3. Are you ready?
Man, born ready. Let's do it.
I would have expected absolutely nothing less, my friend. So, Russ, we started with you in Birmingham, Alabama. I'd like to bring it back to my new adopted side of the pond over here in Europe. And so I would love for you to share with me and the entire Go Along family, what is your favorite European city that you've either visited or still on your bucket list to visit?
All right. In true fashion, I will not give you just one answer here. So I'll give you a region and then a city. Okay. So region, I love the south of France. That is one of the most beautiful areas I've spent time in. And I didn't have a chance to get over to Barcelona.
Not yet.
But I love that south of France area. And probably the prettiest city, one of the city I would enjoy is in the north of France, the Normandy area, which is Mont Saint-Michel.
Mont Saint-Michel, yes.
And so those are two. And then I'm looking bucket list is to get over to Ireland. I haven't had a chance to do that, but that's on my bucket list as well.
Okay, so bucket list is Ireland, but we haven't had Mont Saint-Michel yet. So could we take that from the northern part of France?
Yes, yeah, okay. That to me, that's my favorite. Like
it's phenomenal. It's like this really unique kind of it's this unique kind of place, and so awesome. So thank you very much for that. Yeah. We've not had that one yet, and yes, it is an absolutely phenomenal place. So here we go. The other thing is, question number 2 has a lot to do with my experience with meeting very successful people. And I consider you to be someone who's very successful, Russ. You continue to impact lives positively all around the globe. And you also have very unique insights. And so one of the things that I've always noticed about really successful people is that whenever really successful people, Russ, have a particular plan in mind, not only do they build plans that typically are almost close to perfect, but more importantly is like when they start to execute on those plans, they get things right every single time, the first time. And that's one of the reasons that allows them to, sorry about that. Don't worry, Russ. It's just a joke.
Man, that was about to be great. I don't know what it was. It's gonna be great.
Hey, everybody, if you're not watching the video version, like you literally have to watch the video version because I can just sense Russ was going, oh my gosh, what did you just say? What did you just say? No, it's a joke. It's a joke. It's an inside joke. I like to have fun as well.
Okay.
So here's the thing. Of course, really successful people don't typically get things right the first time and execute perfectly every time, all the time. The reality is, and the first part was a joke, and this is not a joke, really successful people, Russ, typically are making 20 to 50 times more mistakes than anybody else.
Mm.
And without a doubt, every single time that there is a relevant mistake or learning opportunity or whatever you want to call it, these things don't go the way that they're planned. Every single time successful people, without fail, stop. They learn from the mistake. And more importantly, they then take subsequent action to put different strategies, tactics, and actions in place to minimize the probability of that exact same thing happening again. So I don't necessarily really want you to dwell on or think too much about the mistake or the learning opportunity, but really what was the lesson that you took away from that? Because it's that lesson that I would love for you to share with me and the entire Going Long family today, because it's the thing that we really need to hear.
Well, can I set it up with this? Is I heard this a while back, and I won't repeat it perfectly, but you can, I think most people get the gist of this. So there was a college professor one time, and I think it was like in a, art class or whatever. The students came in and broke them up into halves. Said, okay, this class, I want you to spend the whole class focused on creating as much pottery as you can over the semester. At the end of the semester, I'm going to grade you based upon weight, volume. So an A is going to be worth this many pounds or kilos. A B is going to be worth this, C, so forth, right? And the other half, your grade is not based upon volume or weight. It's based upon quality, perfection. I want to bring somebody in here that's an art dealer, and I want them to say, what would they pay for something like this? And perfection is going to be an A, little less is a B, C, so forth, right? So over the time frame of that semester, what happens? The group on the left side of the room who's just creating one piece of pottery after another, right? Without any mindset on how much, what it looks like, is, as you saying, failing over and over and over again. And that's what I've experienced in my life, right? Just constant failure over and over and over again. The difference is that they knew that the failure was not the defining grade. It was their ultimately continuation in the process. And I see that with us as entrepreneurs, right? As compared to the person who stands on the sideline and just looks at things, never starts, and is constantly critiquing the ideas that are out there. And those are the people that unfortunately get left behind. And, in that analogy where that professor in that class ever actually happened, we would all assume that not only did the group on the left side of the room who's creating the volume get the highest grade, but secondly, they produced the finest goods, because over time they were able to improve the process. And I've seen that in our life, that, we've started out with one idea and have started into it, gone down it, and realized this is not the pathway that we should go. And what's been successful for me is that I've constantly reached out and found mentors that I could surround myself with, whether those are people in books, people, that I could actually go physically spend time with, or it was people I was paying for and meeting, on calls, Zoom meetings or whatever. And to me, that has been the greatest impact in my life, is learning, borrowing information. Like the old saying is, you can either borrow information or you can pay retail for it, right? And I've loved the ability to borrow from someone else's experiences and be able to then not just take 100% of theirs, but to take what I love about it and then make it my own, and then be able to enhance it. And I think that that's what I found in our businesses, is that as we've gone down, there's been some businesses that we've invested in that we were like, this is so far out of our knowledge base and expertise that unless we hire an operator, that we just can't run. And so we learned a concept called Culture Index. Culture Index was a tool that we started to use not only to hire people onto our team within our own personal operating company, but we use with any investment partners we have, because we want to understand what their natural gifts are. What are the things that they're going to do or not do? And I can see it. You just don't lie in that test. And so before I'll partner with somebody, well, that was not something I knew early on. And so we had failures in businesses. And had we done that with those people, we would have never invested, because we would have understood ahead of time that this person just does not possess the ability to follow through in areas that we'd want them to.
Well, I absolutely love that story, and also being able to recognize that at the end of the day, it is about how can you fail fast, how can you fail forward, and how can you fail frequently and adapt along the way. So it's great to hear those reminders, and I appreciate you sharing that with us as well. And this takes us to question number 3. And Russ, this is about how we can help fill our minds with more knowledge. I know it's something that you talked about before. I have a hint maybe where we could be going with this one, but what is the one book that you would recommend to the Going Long family today?
Man, I could recommend so many books. and I hate that you want to nail me down on one. Man, one of the books I love the most is a book by Darren Hardy, Entrepreneur Roller Coaster. Awesome. Because it defines the struggles that entrepreneurs deal with. It talks about the need to have A players and what it takes to recruit and retain A players, but also how to stay focused on the one thing. There's lots of little examples in that book. If you've never read it, that's an amazing one. Darren Hardy bought Success Magazine, which was a 100-year-old book, 100-year-old publication, and was able to make it really successful and using some of the same principles that he talks about in the book. And I love a lot about that. And then if I gave you a second one that was not what my business partner would have talked about or what everybody else has talked about, I'd say I have an investment business partner named Mark Podolsky, and he wrote a book called Dirt Rich. And that's probably been one of the most successful investment passive income things in our portfolio. And it's based upon that book and the concept of buying and selling raw land on terms. Fantastic. All right. Dirt Rich. And we've got Entrepreneur Roller Coaster by Mr. Darren Hardy. So you're allowed to over deliver here. Russ, you know what? I like every single time I talk to you, man, it seems like it's like 2 seconds that just goes by super duper fast, because there's so much content and so much experience in terms of the things that you share. And I think about you talking about 2004 graduation, getting in the sales world. You go into becoming a financial planner. You realize the things that you're seeing and you're understanding, you're recognizing this not really the place for you. You had the gumption to decide, hey, listen, I'm not going to be a part of this world. You decided to put that away. You decided to ride the bicycle backwards. Everybody check out that 7-minute video, don't forget. And then when you went through that process to really understand that it's about understanding the different vehicles, one of the vehicles that you have talked about, that you've learned about a lot in terms of the infinite banking concept, that you shared the 3 main principles with us, and I think it was probably 3.5 minutes, something like that. Phenomenal, that mosquito. And aside from that, I mean, it's just continuing to share the knowledge that you have, taking the theory, putting it into practice. I mean, you're even today sharing on a monthly basis the passive income that you are generating, and you're doing that from the different vehicles that you are comfortable with, the different vehicles that you are testing, that you are understanding from the different business partners that you are working with, and building a thriving community and Wealth Without Wall Street. And I know that there are so many people that are just like, Billy, will you just be quiet and ask the man the question, which is, help us understand, Russ, what is the best way for the Going Long family to find out more about you, more about what you're doing at Wealth Without Wall Street as well? Yeah, well, if you go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/passport, that gives you access to the community that Joey and I have built over the last 3.5 years. It's off all the social media channels. We have almost 6,000 others all across the globe that are part of it. And it's always focused on how do we build more passive income than we have monthly expenses? How do we reduce our tax burden? How do we build infrastructure around it? And if there's any accredited investors that are listening to this that are super excited about maybe going deeper into that, I'd point you to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/club200. And there you can see what we're doing within our passive income mastermind, find out if it's something that you should be a part of. We have meetings virtually every single month, twice a month, and we get together live twice a year. And it's focused on growing our passive income to not only equal, but exceed our income by 2 times, because we believe when you have more, then you have more to give. And we want to focus generationally. We want to be great ancestors. And I think that group is made up of 8, 9-figure entrepreneurs who are looking to support and help each other reach the highest that we can get to.
All right. Fantastic. And listen, everybody, don't worry if you're running on the treadmill, if you're cooking dinner, we'll make it very linkable, easy. And so all you'll need to do is click the links and be able to connect with Russ and the Wealth Without Wall Street community. Listen, Russ, I think the thing for me at this point is to say, I really want to thank you for deciding to invest your time with me and the entire Going Long family. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, man. So thank you very, very much.
Man, great pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, perfect. If you give me like 10 seconds, then we'll get out of here. So everyone, listen, Russ left so much value. He's giving you massive ways to get in touch with him. Find out more about yourself, your investor ID. He's talked about the passport also too, at wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/passport. Check it out. And listen, while you're doing that and you're sharing today's conversation with others so that you can also move more from the theory into the practice, becoming a more efficient, effective investor, I'll be here waiting for you, preparing the next conversation. So until then, go out and make it a great day. And thank you very much. Trust that you enjoyed today's conversation. And once again, today's conversation was sponsored by First Generation Capital Partners. If you're an accredited investor and want to find out more about how we're helping accredited investors to gain their personal freedom even faster, go to firstgencp.com/going long.